Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Steve Harper with us. He's a TV writer, producer, playwright, actor, and writing coach in the LA area, Yale University School. And no, this is not Stephen Harper. For my Canadian friends, it is
Not the Prime Minister.
He's the founder and creativity coach at Your Creative Life, president at Harper Creates, and a bunch of other companies, which we'll discuss today. Impressive guy altogether. This podcast brought to you by podpire.com. Podpire is my podcasting company. If you want to start a pod, get on the money when it comes to YouTube AdSense, get leads, and also get sponsors to pay you from your podcast. Podpire.com if you need help with that. Steve, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
I'm so glad to be here. And it's like, with a mover and shaker like yourself, it's kind of, I love the whole sort of vibe of what you do. And, the thing that I'm most interested in that really sort of floats my boat all the time is storytelling. And I feel like there's a way in which people are sort of hide behind a kind of like impressive story rather than getting to the heart of the story. And I see the work that you're doing, talking to people, as really trying to get to the key elements of what the truth is about people and what they're excited about. And, it was interesting to read your material before I got on, because you were like, I'm really interested in the truth. I'm really interested in what the bottom line stuff is. No tap dancing, no selling. It's not about that. It's about really what's going on with people. So I totally respect that. And I love that. And I really was drawn to that kind of truthful storytelling, which is why I originally back in the day became an actor and really focused all of my energy in that kind of space until I realized that even though I love that work and I still do some of that work, it was really about telling other people's stories. And I was like, well, I've got stories of my own that I really want to get to and put out there in the world and, connect and communicate with people and all of that stuff. So, I switched gears to become a writer. And, my parents are educators, so it was all about the educational stuff at first. I went to a prep school, then I went to Yale and studied English and theater and started doing that kind of stuff, and eventually went to acting school, drama school at the ART at Harvard, again, trying to get to the purity of storytelling, and then switched gears. And I realized that I really wanted to be telling stories on stage, unearthing truth about who people are and how they function. And so the thing that is true about me as a storyteller is, my father is a major Catholic, believes in the books of the church. My mother believes in the books of the horror section of the bookstore. So I would come home from Catholic school and mom would be, I'd be like, Mom, tell me what's happening in Salem's Lot, So constantly I write about what I call the invisible things. And sometimes that literally involves ghosts or spirits. Sometimes I think it's about things that people aren't talking about, like race or sexuality or politics or religion, And usually the protagonists in my work stumble into a world where something like that exists, and then they have to find a way to reconcile it by the end. So, I'm really interested in that kind of storytelling, and those sorts of threads have led me into the world of TV and some of the shows I've written on, like American Crime and God Friended Me and Tracker most recently. And I'm also really interested in, because it was so challenging for me, prior to finding my own success in the world of TV, I really want to help other people, particularly, people of color and, diverse folks, find their voice and find their way forward in the industry. And so, I'm all about either storytelling for myself as an actor, interpreting stories, or helping other people tell their stories. That's what I live for.
Fascinating. First, great voice. Also, I can tell that you're educated, and I don't say that often as a compliment because I don't generally believe in the education system. You're a great communicator. Second, we sort of share the same sort of mission. One of my missions, should I say. It's not that I'm not selling. I think I'm like a natural seller to most, but I'm definitely more of a truth seeker. I think that scales infinitely because I think AGI is going to pretty much know everything about all of us one day. It's going to judge us. Are you adding value to this world? Are you a good person or not?
Yeah.
That's coming pretty soon, by the way. So people should start being good.
And when
And
you
then
say
yeah,
how soon is pretty soon, Charles? What is that?
the truth telling AGI that can penetrate everyone's life without them knowing or giving the privacy content thing, like 5 years, I would say.
Wow.
Um, but yeah,
That's
before we get philosophical about that, it's like, okay, why am I doing the pod? Yes, I love trying to get to the essence of people, which is really hard, by the way. I don't
yes.
think you can get to the essence of people
Right.
that quick. But it's just fascinating everything that you've done. And then the last thing is the invisible topics, right? Like I love
Yeah.
getting myself to sleep through Wikipedia nowadays, and I've read about all kinds of things, the ugly topics, like you said, the rapes and the serial killers. Nowadays, I'm reading about bank robbers, which are incredible stories. I could share you a guy, Mezrin, his last name, a French bank robber. This guy had like a James Bond type of life, and he wasn't a totally bad person. Didn't kill that much,
Hmm.
and that's the what invisible force led him to rob all these banks and to always get away. I think he escaped from prison like 5 to 10 times, right? Um, anyway, I'm getting sort of off topic nowadays, but what are you working on right now? Because I saw some DC stuff. By the way, I love DC.
Yeah, DC is cool. I spent 2 seasons on a show called Stargirl, DC
Yeah.
Stargirl, which created by Jeff Johns, who also created the comic book, and that was super fun. And I had never, I've been a comic book guy from way back. I've got 1,200 comic books here in the house that I've been planning to sell, and haven't organized myself enough to do that yet. But the whole notion to me of if Stargirl lives on HBO Max, or Max now, so if people haven't seen it, they should really go back, and it's really fascinating. Breck Bassinger, and it's just a really terrific cast. But the thing that was really exciting for me about that show, having never been on a superhero show, but having loved superheroes, is again, it deals with this core issue of how do we navigate as human beings the power that we have in the world? Like, how do we bring that to the fore? How do we use that? Do we use that for good? Do we use that for evil? And the entire series was, obviously it had these, Jeff is such a smart guy, and we had these superhero battles, but Jeff's rule was we were only going to have them like every 3 episodes. So there were really this, this kind of gearing up character-wise, and Courtney Whitmore saying to herself over and over in episodes, like, how do I live my life as this person who can do these special things? Like, how does this superpower interface with my day-to-day life as a high school student, as a daughter, as a person who's part of this community and this family? Those are the things that I'm most interested in, is what's the intersection between those powers and day-to-day life, how to be a good person, how to sort of move through the world. All of that.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it. Also, like, tell me your secrets. I'm putting that one on my list. How was that one?
That was a pretty wild show, Charles. I don't know. You got to like fasten your seatbelt for that one. That show is I describe it as a female-centered serial killer drama. My mother loves true crime and serial killers, and her whole spin on it, you were talking about the serial killer thing before. My mom's whole spin on it, which I guess if you're going to be in that, you're going to traffic in that area, I like this spin. Her spin was always about the desire for good to win out. Like she's really interested in those things because there's somebody chasing that person who hopefully will solve the issue, and that person will end up in jail. And, the whole notion of how good functions when evil is present is really my mom's thesis. And Tell Me Your Secrets has a lot of twists and turns. It's really, it's really kind of a crazy, wild ride. There's so much, I don't know. You really have to see it to experience it.
And how do you deal with evil and rapes and all of that? Like, it's really hard for me to read, like, these Wikipedias about these horrible things. So
it's awful.
How do you deal?
Why are we so focused as a society on that stuff? It's really challenging.
I'm not. For the record, I'm not. But
I
like exposing myself to dark stuff, because if I don't expose myself to dark stuff, I'm living in this fantasy utopia that really doesn't exist, right?
Well, I don't know. I do think that I would like to think that on balance in the cosmos, and I don't have a crystal ball. You don't have a crystal ball. There's no way to sort of, see it. But I do feel like, for my money, for my sense of things, I do believe there's more good in the world than evil. People are always looking for a good story. So if they're not focused on their personal stories or other people's deep truths, I think on some level, it's kind of perhaps a cheaper version of storytelling to go toward the things that are blowing up, or the people who are killing other people, or what's wrong, or, the focus on disaster. Now, I do believe as a dramatist, that you do have to have that kind of conflict, that kind of, something needs to be wrong in order for a story to be about moving through or past those things. But for my money, I'm not necessarily interested in like dwelling in the space of lionizing the people who are doing the bad things. And I think in some ways, what's fascinating is Tell Me Your Secrets is so twisty that you really do. It really is perhaps the one show that I worked on that does put the sort of insanity at the center of the story. And so it's darker than I think almost everything else I've worked on. And that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's scary, right? Because my gut is telling me like, don't watch that one, because we all have that insanity in us as well. And I think sometimes we're
Yes.
scared to watch these things for that reason. I think it's the same reason why people watch horror movies. It's to prove to themselves that they're not scared, or that they're not that, I'm better than this person.
Yes.
And it's a tough topic. And yeah, talking about recent Wikipedias and films, I've watched a story, read the story of Solomon Northup, not so long ago, 12 Years a Slave.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty horrible as well, like a free man being stole back to slave,
Yeah.
being owned by a slave master.
Yes.
Did you ever follow that one?
That movie, that story really is a story of triumph. It's really about moving out of that space, which I think is so fascinating. And I assume you brought that up. I mean, that's John Ridley won the Oscar for writing the screenplay for that movie, and I got to work for him, which for and with him. He's an amazing guy. We're still in touch today. He created American Crime, which I was on the 3rd season of, and he's just incredibly talented and one of the best showrunners I've ever worked for, in terms of both having a plan for the season. Being collaborative with the writers, being kind in the writer's room, being a really good and clear leader. I would work for John anytime, anywhere. And also, part of the reason I got that job was I had created a web series called Send Me, which you can still find on YouTube. If you go to Send Me web series on YouTube, you'll find it. And it's 17 parts. The whole first season is about 40 minutes. It's about a woman who can send people back in time to the days of slavery, sort of like in this kind of magical way. And she charges people money for it, which is kind of insane. She's got a husband who thinks it's crazy that she does this. She has this magic that's passed down for generations. But I created this web series, and which you could see, and I eventually got John Ridley to see it, and he really appreciated it. So after my time on American Crime, and this was really fascinating for me in terms of my work in the industry, is he said, I want to help you do whatever you can do with this series. And we did our best to turn it into I wrote a pilot for an original TV version of it. And we had a deal with ABC Signature, and we were trying to sell it to a bunch of outlets. And unfortunately, we didn't sell it. But, again, this, working with John has been and is a fascinating thing. He knows the industry so well. He knows writers so well. It's just it's really fascinating to have worked with him and to consider him a friend.
Say we would have that magic, or even better, a Neuralink to give us instantly all these experience and that knowledge of anyone out there. How would the US and the rest of the world be different today if we had that empathy, right?
Yeah, I mean, the empathy would be super powerful, right? I think part of all of our experiences is, and this is really, I sort of pull this into myself from my acting life. It's all really about living through these moments, right? So there's one sense of like, intellectually, perhaps I understand what it's like to be back there in that space, in that time, whatever, right? But to actually live through it moment by moment and make human decisions and, figure out how to stay alive and how to stay kind and how to stay focused and how to keep breathing. Like that's the thing that I think is most valuable for all humanity, is to, not just have an idea about stuff, but to spend time in that space, to build empathy by being that person or being with those people or understanding more deeply, what the opportunities are. And one of the things that this brings up for me too is one of my new adventures that I've never done before, but I'm leaning into in 2025 is I'm doing a one-person show. And I've never done that before as an actor. It's like a huge challenge. It's a story about, I did this drive from Reno to Los Angeles years ago. During the pandemic, I got caught in a freak snowstorm and I thought I was going to die, and the moment by moment of that, what do I do? Like, is my life worth anything? My car spins out. All of these things are really, practicing that, rehearsing it, learning it, all of these things. In my process to move toward production, I'm back in that acting space of moment by moment, living through like how the process is going, how I think it's going, how I feel about myself as an actor, how I feel about the material, working with the director. It's all about being so present, and living through that moment by moment reality that is where people learn and grow. I feel like if we were to have this thing where people could go wherever, back in time, across the world, across the country, whatever it is, I think the growth space would be in those moments of learning that are actually substantive. Like, how do we survive? What do I do here? What do I
Did
say?
you really thought you were dying and like in the snowstorm?
I really thought, I just didn't know. This snowstorm came out of the blue. I was not prepared. And how many people
aren't there like people near you that can bring you in their heated cars or police?
No, that was the thing. So I'm on this road. It's a 7-hour drive, and I get to this space where there are no other cars. I see no other cars out there. First I'm seeing fewer cars, then I'm seeing one, then I'm seeing none. Then I'm spinning out. Then I'm, it's all like the only thing I could do is keep going. So this story is about that, and it's, it's really,
So what happened psychologically? Were you like seeing your full life in front of your eyes? Were you just panicking? What happened?
I went into this huge existential space, and I was kind of like, what, I need to redo my will. Did I back up my computer? Like, what is happening here? I just had to continue to evaluate, but also for me spiritually, I was saying prayers. I was like, I need to just like one moment in front of the other. I was on the phone a little bit with my husband because I had come from his house in Reno and I was going to LA, but I was just freaking out. I did not know what to do with myself, and that's why on the other side of it, the notion of how I connect to life now, like trying to remember and be appreciative of every day, of my health, of my, my office that I love here, my writing, my coaching clients, my TV work, the chance to talk to you, like, what an adventure. And talk about ancestors. My ancestors would be looking at me, and then maybe they already are, going, what a miracle this guy is, descended from us, who gets to do all these things in his life. That's really what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you get frostbite? Like, did you end up walking or what?
I did not have to walk, thank God. My car held up, although there were things like the windshield wiper fluid was not working and I could barely see and I had to keep stopping. There were some crazy things, but no frostbite, thank God. And I didn't have to walk.
Was it a 4x4 type of car?
No, I own a Kia Forte. This is not, I don't
front traction,
have snow tires. I was not prepared.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, so, and this show is being done as part of Solo Fest in San Francisco. So you can look up Solo Fest and find the performances of, the show is called Snow, Black Man, Whiteout.
Yeah, I have that here.
Yes.
Right, and on your LinkedIn.
That's right. Yes, we're crowdfunding now, so people can support us.
Great. And great story, and that relates to my direct next question, which is, my theory, I mean, yes, there is some intellectual work to be done on storytelling and learning and practicing, but my theory on storytelling is just be an interesting person, right? Like live these life and death situation, like me in my last 100K, where I was carrying two humans,
Mm,
not on my back, but like walking with them and just waiting till one falls to
wow.
the ants and to the jungle and to
Mm,
be eaten alive. Well, I didn't know what the hell to do, and I walked like 5 kilometers with both of them.
wow.
Is this the way to tell a nice story, like live a dangerous life, or do you have other tips for us?
Well, I don't know. I don't think the danger is required. I think, ultimately, look, there are lots of people who live stories like you just did, which are great. Those are great stories to tell when you tell them in detail with specificity, when you bring the audience along, when you don't skip steps, when you build momentum and tension, all of that stuff, when you articulate the things that people don't know about a story, you can pull them into any story. And what I'm aware of, my parents are older now, and my brother and I are taking care of them. And as my father's in his 90s, it's like life in and of itself is an adventure. Life in and of
Yeah.
itself has danger. The notion of who my parents are now and who they were 50 years ago, who they were when they had us. There's enough interesting, fascinating drama in the everyday that I think if people articulate it well and know how to, talk about it, position it, move the story along, I think all of it, we all have fascinating, interesting stories that can be beneficial to people.
Right. Yeah, I believe so too. One needs to have either great memory to recall all the details in that story, ideally, or one needs to be a drama queen type of person that just adds layers of sort of
Yes,
falsehoods. I guess that's like most humorists
it's like both. Yeah.
nowadays. Or ideally, they'd be like, yeah, this happened to my friend. To have that many stories, right? You can recall other stories. That's another way to do it and not live them yourself, but retell them from their perspective. Also, it
Mhm.
covers your ass because you're not sure if they lied or not. Anyway, I'm not sure where I'm getting with that, but Steve, thanks for coming on to the pod. Where can people find out more about you?
Yes, you can find out about me and my coaching at yourcreativelife.com. I'm also on Twitter and all sorts of social media stuff, but mostly you can find those through yourcreativelife.com. And if you want to find out about me as a writer, I'm at harpercreates.com. And you'll also find links to the solo show and all that stuff there. So it's great to be on. It's really fun to chat with you.
Thank you, Steve. So that was Steve Harper, not the politician. And